Hello world! You asked it, so I'm here to provide a simple and clear tutorial on big parking lot roads. We are passing over a big old parking lot in a city that I am currently working on over on Twitch. Today, I will be teaching you how to achieve something like this. We will cover which mods and assets you will need, the absolute basics of using these assets, some more advanced options to really customize your parking lots, tips for aesthetics and how to improve their visual appeal, and finally, some general FYIs about the assets and some tips and tricks. Let's get into it. The asset and mod list is pretty simple. You need, of course, the big parking lot assets themselves by Hockenheim 95, and you will need an anarchy mod. And without precision engineering, some parts of this will be pretty difficult to get exact. I also would recommend Move It and Find It to make your life easier, but they're not a 100% requirement. Links to all of these will be available in the description below. And now for the actual tutorial. As you are looking at the big parking lot assets, you will see that each type of network has essentially 4 options. You have a lighter pavement version and a darker pavement version, and each of those has a version with a pavement curb and a grass curb. Up here, you can see the pavement curb. Down here, you can see the grass curb. It blends in so well with the grass of the actual city that it can be tough to see. Both have their uses. I have a mod that is changing the color of my roads, so I can't demonstrate the difference of the lighter and darker roads, but just place them down side by side. You'll know which ones you want to use. Going through the network types, we have the drive road, which is how your sims get from your normal roads into your parking lot. The next 2 networks are both borders. I'll show you the difference later, but basically they are what you will be placing around the edges of your parking lot. We have a filler road. That is the road that goes in between your parking spaces. We have curbs that you can put down manually. I'll show you where you can use them best. And we have the freeform border tool, which comes in handy in a few places. Again, we will get to where you can use them. Hey guys, let's build a parking lot. There are essentially 4 very basic steps to using the big parking lot tools. Let's build our first parking lot with just those 4 basic steps so that you get the hang of it, and then we'll do a more advanced parking lot afterwards. For the purposes of this tutorial, we'll just use the lighter road color with the curb for all of our parking lots. When you're building your parking lot, you'll want to stick with the lighter roads if you start with the lighter roads, and you can interchange the pavement curb and grass curb as you want to. I like to build the parking lot first and then help my citizens get to it. So we will build a rectangular parking lot just here-ish. But there's a couple things I need to set up with precision engineering first. I'm going to turn road bending off. I'm going to turn road guidelines off. This one's optional but super helpful. And I'll keep anarchy on. It will be needed later. Let's draw a rectangle. I'm going to draw this rectangle twice to show you how this border road works. First, I'm going to draw it clockwise. And let's inspect. Do you see how the inside of the road is a thicker curb and the outside is kind of nothing? That's because we technically drew the border backwards or inside out. If you want to get it right the first time, you need to draw your border counterclockwise, but it's really not a big deal. If you need to fix it, just right-click with the upgrade tool the same way that you change one-way roads when you're drawing normal, well, one-way roads. So we've learned best practice is to draw the roads counterclockwise. Here's another thing that you'll need to remember when drawing your main parking lot area. The unit measure, see here it says 16 units, on either the length or the width will need to be divisible by 3. So this way, I'll leave it at 20, but as we go down, I'm going to have this one be 9 units long because 9 is divisible by 3, and I'll demonstrate to you why in just a moment. That is step 1 completed, drawing the border around the outside of the parking lot. Step 2 is using the filler road to draw the spaces in between where the cars park. Let's zoom in a second. Here's where the whole divisible by 3 thing happens. We know these filler roads go in between the parking spaces, right? Each parking space is one of these little squares big. And the filler road is 2 of these squares big. So 1 parking space square plus 2 filler roads square is the 3 that we want to be divisible by. When you're placing your filler road in, you always want to leave a gap of the 1 square to later be able to put the parking spaces in it. So I'm leaving a gap here of 1 square. I'm placing my filler road in the 2 squares. And I'm doing the same thing again, leaving a gap here of 1 square and placing the filler road of 2 squares. Because I left this length divisible by 3, see how it's 9 units long? It worked out very nicely. If you have both your length and your width divisible by 3, you can choose to go horizontal or vertical with the filler roads, which also means going horizontal or vertical with your parking spaces. As you play with it more and more, you'll get a groove for it. For now, we've completed step 2, putting in the filler roads. Step 3 is kind of the exciting part, putting in the parking spaces. There's a variety of parking spaces available to you. These ones here that you see with the P crossed out will mean that people will not park in those spaces. If you read the text here, it shows the intention is that you can place props in there to make the parking lot look more crowded. You can also do the opposite and leave cars out of there so that the parking lot looks less crowded, whatever works for you. This here is the standard 1 wide parking space. It's 1 square wide. It actually becomes 3 parking spaces. This is the same thing, only it's 5 squares wide. These ones show the accessible parking decal when you place them down. These 2 have a space in between the parking spaces. I'm going to show you them a little bit later in the video. And these 2 only have 1 side of the parking spaces. Again, I'll show you those a little bit later. For now, I like to start with the 5 square wide standard parking spaces, and all you do is plunk them in and along these empty spaces. So, click. I should mention right about now that if you have anarchy turned off, you will not be able to place these parking spaces. See how it goes all red and angry? Turn anarchy on, no more problem. Click and click. We've got some empty spaces. I'll address those in a second. Let's do some more here. And I'm going to leave some room for some accessible parking. Let's fill these rest in here. This handily leaves me space for the accessible parking on the end. Now you'll notice the accessible parking. Do you see how it's allowing me to go either side? You actually go both sides with it because it only places down the 1/2 of the parking space, if that makes sense. And to show you something you may come across, see how as I move my mouse around, it wants to snap to either the top, the bottom, or even the right. You can place it on the right and that will function as a parking space. Just keep in mind where your mouse is showing the parking space will go. Now these spots in the middle are empty just because of the way that I placed the parking spaces. So I'm going to take this single parking spaces and I'm just going to put it right in there. We are almost done step 3. This looks like a parking spot, but we've got these little kind of gank bits on the end here. This clipping remover will help with that. Use the clipping remover and it will make any of these weird itty bits just turn to the pavement color. You'll find you get more comfortable with the clipping remover as you use it. Essentially, if you see a spot that looks like an open kind of dot in your parking lot, try using the clipping remover right over top of it, and it should help. That's step 3 done. Now, my step 4 is some people's step 1, and however you are most comfortable doing it is great. Let's zoom back out. I like to add the bits to drive up to the parking lot at the end, and it's very straightforward. Go from your parking lot to the road, or from the road to your parking lot, wherever you like, whatever makes sense to you. These roads are how your citizens will get from your main roads into your parking lot. That's it. That's a parking lot with big parking lot roads. You've done it. Do you want to do it again? Let's make our parking lot a slightly different shape this time. Still going to grab this border. I'm going to keep everything divisible by 3. So let's do 9 units. Let's do 6 units, 12, 6, the 21, and 12. That was step 1. Step 2, placing filler. As long as you leave your 1 space available for the parking spaces, you can change around how you do your filler. If you've left everything divisible by 3, or at least most things divisible by 3, you can kind of do some weird shapes. Not that this is necessarily realistic, but it can be pretty fun. So there's step 2. Now step 3 is where we're gonna have some fun with these parking spaces. Remember how these are parking spaces just on one side? And if we recall back to the previous parking lot, the accessible parking is also just on one side. So up here, let's put all the accessible parking along the top. And then if we grab this other standard parking, we can put it on the bottom and use this smaller version as well. And that works. Let's do some standard parking spaces in here. Nothing special. Over here, we'll do the same. Our usual standard spaces with some accessible spaces. But here's where we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Let's zoom in again. And let's use these parking spaces that have that space in the middle. Now take note, when you're looking at the asset, in the title on the right, it says 2-meter curb, and then it says 4-meter curb. Let's put the 2-meter curb up here. Oh, do you see what I did there? I accidentally put this one sideways. So we'll delete it and try it again. And I'm going to focus my mouse more up top here, and it fixes it. And let's put this 4-meter curb along the bottom. Where have we seen 2-meter curb and 4-meter curb before? It's these guys. So that's where these come in. Let's take a 2-meter grass curb and you just put it in the middle. It should snap to where it needs to snap. And with anarchy on, you just plunk it in. How awesome does that look? And let's do the 4-meter curb on the bottom. Done and dusted. Now, if those look a little funny to you, like they're poking out, they do to me as well. So I'm going to grab it with the node selector from Move It. I'm going to hold down Alt so that I get that green line showing up that keeps it straight. And I'm just going to scooch it in to where I want it. Looks much better. Over here, we will do some more accessible parking. And with those in, let's zoom over here for a second for something different. Remember how there were 2 border roads? We've been using this border 2L vanilla version, and it's the most common and definitely the easiest to use. But I do want to show you what this side parking vanilla version does. Let's take it, upgrade just this one section, and it looks really weird. That's okay. When you're using this border, I suggest doing it somewhere where you have space both to the right and left of it, or to the top and bottom of it, depending on what you're doing, to have the curb continue a little bit. I think I'll be able to better explain that as we move forward. For now, let's go back up to these parking spaces, these ones here that only go to one side, and we're going to put them on the outside of this different border type that we've done. So I'm gonna do the big one there, and I'll fill in the rest with these wee ones. And it looks a little strange, but that's what we're going for. The goal from here is essentially to clean up this border and make it look less whack. There's a couple ways you can do it. I'm going to show you how you're intended to do it within these big parking lot roads, and that's with these freeform borders. Let's use this one. I'm going to preface this with the fact that the theme that I'm using right now does look a little jank, but you'll see what I'm doing and you'll understand. And the point is to draw your own curb around this little sticky outy bit. I suggest turning off all of your snapping and drawing it as best you can. Now that's such a short length. Once I get over here, it always yells at me about distance being too short. So I just draw it wherever I can, and I'm gonna move it, mod it back in. So I'm taking the Move It mod, and I'm just basically finicking around with it enough so that these parking spaces are perfectly outlined. And look at what I've done. See how it looks horrible? Guys, this looks awful. It just looks brutal. I've drawn it backwards. So I'm going to take the upgrade road. I'm going to right click all of the 3 roads that I just did until it looks like this. We're almost there. You have to trust the process. Gonna use the Move It mod to finick these things back in. And that's essentially what it's supposed to look like. Let's zoom out. And once you get out here, it doesn't look the worst. It's still not great though. If we replaced it with this grass curb, that definitely looks a lot better. Let's move back in. Some other options that you have available to you are using these other curbs that are the same ones we used up here. I would suggest basically the same thing. Put them in as best as you can and use a Move It mod to kind of tinker around with them. That looks all right. I've also seen people use ploppable pavement to their benefit. Basically taking it, plopping it along the side here, moving it up with Move It mod, and then painting pavement around it to do like a plaza around it. That works as well. I think what we've got there is going to work the best for us. So the last part of step 3, if you remember, is the clipping remover. So see this big spot over here? You just plunk the clipping remover in, plunk it in, and they disappear. Step 3 is done. We have a parking lot. Step 4, or some people step 1, take the drive and let people get into your parking lot. That's it. That's our kind of wacky, fun-shaped, fun stuff parking lot. If you have questions about that process or you need me to clarify something, please let me know in the comments below. Let's go over some little tips and then we are done and dusted. I do suggest using paths to connect kind of each end of the parking lot with your main roads. This will make it more likely for your Sims to come into your parking lot and park here and then get to where they need to go. You can zone on the sides of these parking lots. Whether or not you zone like this, or if you plunk down buildings using Ryko, you can put buildings on the sides of these parking lots to create like a little shopping center. Don't hesitate to use Prop and Tree Anarchy and put in some trees or bushes along these inner curbs. It can add quite a bit as far as visuals go. Along the same line with visuals, put in your own parking lot lights. I like these curved avenue lights. You'll find your own that you enjoy. I don't know about you, but when I play Cities Skylines on Twitch, I like to have my viewers name my roads, like Hindenburgdom over here. But when you're showing road names, they will show in your parking lots. You can either turn off road names in your options menu, right here under gameplay, display road names, or if you want the road names displayed and you just don't want these ones to have any names, I find just changing all the names to the minus symbol or the hyphen gives enough of a change. TMPE also works in parking lots. I've never found much of a reason to use it within the parking lot itself, but certainly on the drives that join into your regular roads, you can have your Sims give way. And I feel if I'm going to be a responsible Cities Skylines player, I should let you know that you don't have to have parking lots if you don't want them. Often I use them just for aesthetics, to give that shopping center vibe, or if you do use TMPE, under the gameplay tab in the options you can enable more realistic parking so that your citizens do in fact need parking spaces. And that is the tutorial video on big parking lot roads. Please do let me know if you have any questions or if I can clarify anything for you. If you found this helpful, of course, give it a thumbs up, that really helps out. If you want more Cities Skylines content, tutorials, let's plays, subscribe to the channel. And what tutorial do we want next? Thanks for being here, everybody. I will catch you next time.